Hey, welcome back to Curiosity Hub. I'm Ollie Hubbard. We all know that trees put out seeds, but I didn't realize until recently that on average each tree only raises one offspring. But all of those unsuccessful seeds and seedlings that die aren't just failures. They are crucial for the development of soil and the whole ecosystem. But to put it all into perspective, if a beech tree lives for 400 years, it will produce around 1.8 million seeds. But I mean, it's got nothing on the poplar, which can produce 54 million every single year. And I mean, we're talking about like the most crucial role, the most crucial part of a tree's life, continuing its genetic legacy. And to see the importance of this job, some sick trees or stressed trees can often actually put out way more seeds than healthy trees because they seem to be prioritizing the future generation when they know that maybe their time's coming to an end. And this time is also important because trees can't normally move, but when they're a tiny little seed, they can. They can spread geographically, and trees do move. They migrate, and you can see that by the retreating ice sheet about 21,000 years ago compared to now. And these maps provided by NASA show that retreat north. And a more recent study comparing from 1980 to 2015, focusing on the eastern half of the United States, has found that 73% of species are moving west and 62% of species are moving north. And it seems to be that they're following the increasing moisture of the soil and retreating from soil that's drying up. So all in all, the spread and success of these seeds is so important that a myriad of solutions have been created by nature, and the first uses wind. So you've probably seen a fluffy little dandelion seed floating in the wind, and most of them lie between 2 meters of the parent plant, but some have been found up to 150 kilometers away. And it's only recently that researchers have actually found the ingenious fluid mechanics that allows its flight. Basically, the bristles on a single seed induce drag, and in fact the bristles have up to 4 times the amount of drag than a solid disc of the same area. But there are huge gaps in between the bristles that allow air to flow up through them, and we think that it's this kind of mechanism which creates a separated and stable vortex ring above it. And we had theorized these kind of vortexes before, but we didn't think they were stable enough to actually occur in real life. And the result of all this is just that the seed will stay in the air longer and be stable, which means it can be blown further away. And not to mention, it's super efficient in terms of its use of materials, which means that the plant doesn't have to use as much energy to create the seed. And we've also seen similar mechanisms in the wings of tiny little insects, and even how a little fly larvae underwater captures its food using similar little feathery structures. Although this technique is probably best for really small light seeds, because heavier seeds that fall from higher up tend to favor more winged kind of structures, like the maple. But a few weeks ago, Phoebe and I were in New Zealand and we saw something else as well. The cottonwoods were setting seed and they were drifting across the sky. And we also saw them land down onto the lake, and they were floating and being spread by the really gentle breeze. And so that brings us to the next mechanism that plants use: water. So as well as the lightweight cottonwood, one of the biggest seeds that uses water is the coconut. I mean, have you ever wondered how in the world do coconut trees get on completely deserted islands? I mean, it could be birds, but
it's a simple question of weight ratios. A 5-ounce bird could not carry a 1-pound coconut.
So coconuts simply spread by being buoyant and drifting along the ocean currents. And how do they survive the long journeys? Well, they simply bring along their own delicious source of food and water. But what if the plant isn't near wind and it's not near water? Then it just needs to disperse itself. There's plenty of more explosive examples, but my favourite are the seeds of the Erodium cicutarium. So here Otto Wilhelm Thom depicted them all the way back in 1885, and he was a German botanist. So as you can see here, the green long thing has about 5 seeds in it, just like these ones here. And when they're ready, they'll all form a spiral around the center with the small, long, pointy end attached. And when an animal comes past or even a strong wind touches it, any slight disturbance, they'll all spring off and spread around the plant. So now it's on the ground, you're probably thinking, okay, well, that was cool. That was pretty cool. But as you can see in this picture here, they have that spiral tail which can unwind and then spiral back up. And it doesn't require any energy from the seed. It just occurs due to changes in humidity. So when it's sitting there on the ground, the simple changes in humidity between the day and night allow it to wriggle away from its parent plant. So it wriggles by unwinding and then winding back up. Unwinding, winding back up. And it wriggles, wriggles, wriggles until it gets to a little groove or a hole in the soil and it will get stuck. And then the unwinding of the spiral and straightening back out will orientate the seed into the groove and twist it into the soil. So by the end, it's sitting vertically in the soil and buried safe inside without requiring any extra energy at all. I mean, it's just amazing. And the European Space Agency thinks it's amazing too because they're researching it and thinking about how they could use it as an example of a low energy exploration tool. In fact, speaking of space, it's a common myth that NASA invented Velcro, when really it was actually just a German engineer by the name of George D. Mestral who was taking his dog for a hike. And when he got back home, he realized that his pants and his dog were covered in cockleburs. So he got a microscope and looked at how the cockleburs were sticking with little hooks to the loops of his fabric and his dog's hair. And so from that, he invented the classic hook and loop design of Velcro. But as well as using the outside of animals, plants also use the inside through things like fruit. And my favorite example of this is chili. So chilies are spicy because of a chemical inside them called capsaicin. And most people think that that probably arose due to capsaicim's antifungal properties. But the spiciness keeps most mammals away. And most mammals would destroy the small soft seeds inside the fruit when they chew it and process it. But birds aren't affected by capsaicin, and birds also don't destroy the small soft seeds when they process it. So however it arose, it's extremely useful in the successful distribution of the plant. Although it's also kind of funny that in the end, the spiciness and one particular mammal's love of the spiciness has resulted in the plant being distributed around the whole world. But it's not just fruit. Nuts like acorns also get eaten and spread by animals. And in fact, this raises a really interesting question, because the more seeds the trees put out, the more food for the animals. The more animals, the more the small saplings and seeds get eaten. So how do the trees control the animal populations to remain relatively low? Well, the trees only release their seeds every few years, called mast years. And so for the time in between, the animals can't rely on the seeds as a food source, and so it keeps the population numbers relatively low. But how then do all the trees coordinate which years to set seed? Well, next week we'll be talking about how trees and plants communicate, and we're really getting into all that. So subscribe if you want to catch that. As always, the links and all the information are down in the description, so check those out and feel free to ask any questions or discuss anything further down in the comments. And if you have any plant-loving friends, feel free to share this with them. And apart from that, I'll see you next week. Thanks heaps.